Hi, everybody. It's the show with Ron. We've got a lot of news to get through, a lot of things to add some context or commentary to. So let's get right to it. First, until I was overseas as an American, I never heard of this Eurovision thing. It's pretty cool if you like pop music, which I do. But I think a lot of non-Americans would be surprised to know how many Americans have never heard of Eurovision or anything about it. Here we have something about Nikki Haley. There was some news just as recently as last week about how high she polls in some states, including Indiana still. Obviously, what's happening is the establishment, the party, the Republican Party, is holding her out as the second replacement for Trump, like during the convention. If Trump, who knows how much legal trouble that they can get Trump in before the convention, but she clearly appears to be the backup candidate right now. Here we've got poor Barron Trump. See his little face? It's a boy's face on a man's body. Can you imagine the pressure that kid is going to have to endure his whole life? And they were just about to thrust him into the limelight at the convention as a delegate for Florida, but I think they wisely pulled back. You see, this is this haunted blank look we all have at a certain time in our youth when we kind of know what's in store for us, but we don't know exactly. So we're guarded and we're just becoming adults, but we're still kids. That face is takes me back. Okay. Why are free speech defenders not helping campus protesters? This is the situation that we have on the U.S. campuses in the United States. The protests over Gaza that got really violent, almost recalling 1968. Not quite that bad, but 1968 was another time at kind of a peak, a juncture of history, a cataract of history in time where unease and unrest in the country was at a high, and there seemed to be a big disconnect between different ages of people, different generations. And this has erupted on campus. Surprising a lot of people, especially in the Democratic Party, that thought this sort of left-wing protesters who would be thought to be Democrats would be firmly on Biden's side, on the Democrat side, but there was a lot of unease because, like any president, usually you follow the long-term foreign policy goals of the country, and the U.S. has long been top donor and ally to Israel. Israel has done a lot of strikes on potential enemies there, has been our proxy in the region. It's the only democracy in the region, really. So Biden initially parroted that line that we're going to go down to support Israel no matter what. But it's an election year, and a lot of his supporters do not support that. And Israel itself has been incredibly derelict in the way that they have conducted in the war. They know very well the attention that was put on the United States in the way the United States conducted itself when it bombs somebody or when it's fighting in Iraq. They know that the public pressure's on to say, oh, you're just trying to kill all the innocent people because you hate all people, etc. So that has caused Biden to kind of flip-flop. And now this article's just from a few days ago. It's from I don't know what the date is. Oh, here it is, the 3rd. Oh, it's from a week ago. And since then, Biden's gone a lot far and has that they're talking about withholding funds from Israel. This sounds like a kind of a performative thing by the White House. No funds are being withheld. It's sort of a warning. I think Israel would probably see it as something that's said for internal consumption, meaning it's said within the United States to pacify critics of the Biden administration. So here was something kind of interesting, the way that what Biden's having to say, and he both has to support Israel firmly, and he also has to warn Israel off because of the public pressure from the protesters. And here, I just kind of like this remark. The president's remarks underscored the delicate line Biden is walking to keep intact the Democratic coalition, including his young voters protesting the war in Gaza, while not wavering for his support in Israel. So you see, it's easy to campaign and say a lot of things out on the campaign trail, but it's hard to rule because you have these moderating things you've got to do to play both sides once you're in power. And of course, your opposition, Trump, is struck a very different tone, encouraging crackdowns. Again, this makes me remember or think about history in the late 60s, where you have the older generation kind of confused that the younger generation is suddenly taking such a hard line against established policy. I did have a video about a week ago where I'm comparing, like, isn't it interesting how what's happening now in some way repeats some of the beats of the 60s. Not exactly, but I'll put the link to that video down below as opposed to going all through it again. And I also wanted to say, obviously, what Biden was trying to do in kind of holding off and saying anything and really kind of stumbling into this big issue is everyone would say these protests on the universities are at the end of the year because in May you have the graduation ceremonies. It's the end of the year. Everyone's off for summer. So they're just saying, okay, so if nothing really big happens on campus, a lot of shootings or killings or this sort of thing, just wait a week and then wait another week. Graduation will be over. There's no more classes. All the students will go home. But I think some of the protesters realized that too, especially at UCLA, and they tried to escalate it, barricading themselves in the building to make an issue of this and bring it to the forefront. And they did. And you can always say violence doesn't work, but it does work. And we've seen many cases where, the riots in Los Angeles back in 1991, a lot of people saying we need to crack down hard, but ultimately, in a way that those riots brought to the fore a lot of grievances that local people had, that black folk had, and it created a lot of changes. And certainly the violent protesters here, I'm not saying this is good or bad, but the violent protesters on campus in the United States, they forced a change in U.S. policy. So like I was saying today, we've got Biden saying he's going to withhold arms from Israel. That is unprecedented and quite amazing. So more about Trump's trial. And I just wanted to point this out, the Stormy Daniels testimony. Now, in when I'm doing my little show here, I'm not trying to defend or support one side or the other, but I do want to clarify what happens, especially at a time when the media is so partisan. Since you always hear about this as the hush money trial, it's not a hush money trial really. what the trial is about is that hush money was paid, which apparently isn't illegal because, former presidents such as Bill Clinton came to a legal agreement with people who were accusing him for very substantial sums. But the problem was, it seemed like, or the accusation is that Trump is, they misreported it. They took it out of campaign funds, or federal law was broken because it wasn't accounted for properly, or they falsified accounting on it. And as we know, with federal law and with accounting, the penalties are severe. However, since this is sort of an accounting error with severe penalties, the media still gets to say it's a hush money trial, as if paying hush money to people is unusual or illegal, which unfortunately it isn't. And it allowed all of this super salacious testimony to come in, which people saying, well, it really doesn't have anything to do with it, with the accounting errors or the accounting misdeeds, but it does allow really salacious headlines. And, if it is indeed the fact that Trump did something illegal in this case, seems like where there's smoke, there's fire. This is another one of kind of Trump's unforced errors, because you got to know when you're in this position and people are after you, and he says it all the time, so he knows that people are after him. You can't play games like this where federal reporting is in play. So I don't know. So now he gets all these intimate, perverted bedroom details, and it's a hush money trial. But it's when you're in that high position, they're going to come for you, and you know it. So what can you say? Don't make mistakes. Don't try to do things the wrong way, if that's indeed what has happened. Yes. Oh, here, I was already on this page. Auroras. Never seen one. Gosh, would love to see an aurora. Where are these pictures? I was surprised oh, here we are. I was surprised that there weren't more people coming out and say this was the end times and end of the world. Which is, again, what they said in the late 60s and early 70s. I remember that. It was a big thing. Churches were big. It was all about the end time, because it did seem like that the temporal powers, our government, could no longer be trusted. Our infrastructure was falling apart. People didn't know how to rule anymore. There was no future to buy a house for a young person. And all the things that are being said right now. Gold rush, people rushing to gold. The only good thing, one good thing about having gold, especially physical gold, is that it's not super easily transferable to spend, because a lot of us growing up, when we receive like a $10 from our grandfather or something, we immediately start thinking, how do we convert? What does that stand for? I could buy a hat. I could buy this. I could buy something with it. You never think of it as money. And thus money goes away, because we're always, even when we're holding the money, we're converting it to something else in our minds. So if you have gold, it's a lot less easy, because you've got to go and convert it, pay it, and send it somewhere and get some money back. So it's a lot more difficult to convert that into easy money. And I've always thought that, even when I'm doing good, you have some stocks or something, it's so easy to say, I could just pull that money out of there, almost just like a bank account, just some tax issues. But and spend it. You always, I put the down payment on this because you don't see it in terms of the money you're keeping. You're seeing it in terms of what you can buy. So, and this is not supposed to be investment advice, and gold is kind of high now. Really supposed to buy when things are low, not when they're high. But the main thing, consistency. If you start putting money away on something, whatever it is, you're better off than waiting, and then you're going to spend that money in the meantime. What else do we have here? This guy, Sam Rubin, everybody knew him. Kind of died not too old. It's a kind of interesting thing in Japan, very Japan is a very ethnically homogenous state. As a lot of states in the world, they still a lot of countries still have combined ethnicity and nationality. It isn't like a lot of the other Western democracies that have split that apart. So now, like a Mexican guy can come to the U.S. and be citizenship and be fully American. In Japan, I know the countries are kind of trying to force Japan into the Western model to accept all kinds of migrants from all around the world and accept them in a Western fashion. But sometimes it results in something like this, where still the assumption of people on the ground in that country is that how could you be Japanese if you're not a Japanese person? Meaning the ethnicity, and you have this concurrent sort of view of foreigners. I think it's too easy to use terms such as xenophobia in a case like this as if it's some medical condition or some extremely outside reaction to something it's illogical, that it's almost like a pathological thing. I think if we understand how in many countries the ethnicity and nationality is still combined, and they haven't quite hooked on to Western ideas, even though we force them to, that people will have these ideas. So I think that's all the news for today. I've got another good article about some of the differences in the main policy areas of Biden and Trump. Some of these are kind of surprising and interesting, and they display how each of the political parties in the United States have flip-flopped in their some of their main ideology. Or maybe they're in the process of doing that, and it shows the time we're in. I will make a separate video on that because we can talk about that more, and there's some other interesting things in the news. Before we go, I will, as always, plug my book, There Are Still Unknown Places. This is a novel of modern life, modern young people in a giant metropolis of Bangkok, Thailand, contrasted against the epic history of the land, of the world, of the entire universe, the planet, and how our little lives, they're all we have, and they're epic to us, and in some ways they're as epic as the universe. This is this book, and I'm excited, super excited, because I just got the new paperback printing of why don't I turn that off? Of my earlier book, Last Century. This is, it says, beset by ghosts, trapped by the Khmer Rouge, entombed with a legendary sword. An unforgettable collection of true life expat tales, if I do say so myself. This is a book where I wrote some of the adventures I had in late 1980s, 1990s last century in Asia. Some of the extreme things you probably couldn't imagine. But what I did was I tried to apply the discipline of the format of the short story to these memoir-esque tales. Of course, a short story is not just a story that's short. It's a story in which all of the elements of the story relate back to the theme, and in the telling of in the way that you describe things relates to the theme. There's supposed to be no extraneous detail. I don't know if I fully did that, but that was my attempt, and I think I attempted to make something different. So anyway, new paperback edition, and stay tuned for my other videos. Please like and subscribe. It's going to get super exciting this year as we get into the election, and if you want some extra context and commentary to understand maybe what's going on behind these headlines that you're being fed, stay tuned to my channel. Thank you. Bye-bye.